Stephanie. This morning, I don't know if you guys know, but it's a crazy weather in Montreal. I think we're already we're waiting for a foot of snow. So.
Wow. Oh my gosh, a foot. That's quite a bit. Okay, so let's do a quick round of introductions, and then Travis is going to go through a presentation and the demonstration, and I'll let Travis kind of introduce himself and the company. Travis, you want to start it off?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I like to say, when the weather outside is frightful, let's get together and have a conference call about invoice processing, right? So,
yeah.
My name's Travis Spengler. I represent User Friendly Consulting, and we are a reseller of a product called Abby FlexiCapture, which is an invoice solution that we're going to be talking about today. And I look forward to hearing about your processes, your business, and what we can do to help you out.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Travis. So you probably all know me. I'm Stephanie Berwick, and on the Multiview side, Greg, you want to also introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Steve. It's nice to meet you finally. My name's Greg. I'm part of the leadership team here.
Very nice. Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
Dave?
Yes. I think Steve. I think Chris and I were on the phone as well. So.
Good morning.
Thank you both. And Steve, if you want to just go around the folks on your side, just very quickly, I think that'll be nice.
Karen, Dimitri, you guys want to go?
Hi, this is Karen. I'm the financial analyst on the team helping with implementation.
Hi guys, I'm Dimitri. I work with Steve. I'm the director here at Momentum.
And good morning, guys. So we're all there. Nick is going to be there in a couple of minutes. He's CFO of our team.
Okay, excellent. Are there any initial questions before we turn it over to Travis?
Nope, not on our side. Thank you.
All right, great. And we'll all be here to answer any questions that may come up from the Multiview side. But Travis, it's all yours.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for everybody's time. I'm going to go through a quick presentation. I will not lecture you on every bullet point, so you might see some points that I may not reference to. So if you see something that you want to ask me about, please stop me. This is meant to be pretty informal, so please stop me and ask any questions you have. But we'll kind of swing through this PowerPoint and then show you the software so we can get down to the nitty-gritty good part of it. So some of the concerns that we're looking to tackle when we talk about invoice processing are some that you very well know of. We want to make sure that, one, we reduce the cost, of course. We want to make sure we have visibility. We understand what our cash management situation is. Of course, we want lower cycle times. And lastly, like I already kind of mentioned, we want to know where our money's going. So that's a little important in businesses today, I hear. So that's what we're looking to do and tackle. And the way we do it are by those actions that you see there. And we're really going to focus on the first one, automating the invoice receipt process, and that's really what we're going to tackle today. A couple ways that we do that are we look at these three things: the cost of the invoice, the visibility, and the control. And our goal is to reduce as much manual, error-prone processing as we can, get invoices off of your desks and off of your file folders, and get them into a system where we then have full control and approval processes and workflows around. So we'll do that using what we call efficient entry. Early awareness just means that we get that document into the system as soon as possible, no matter where it's coming from. And then if we do need approval or workflow processes around it, we will implement that as well. The manual invoice process, as you probably know all too well, is a very, very cumbersome paper-driven process. So you can see here at the top, if we follow this diagram, if we have multiple locations, we have to figure out ways to get those invoices into the finance department. So we got to travel all the way down to the bottom part of this slide. And then eventually we got to go through, some manual intervention, people typing data in, all in an effort to get data over to our ERP or accounting systems. Our goal with the software is to remove that hand-over-hand paper transfer, remove all of these steps, prevent a lot of staff error-prone processing like the manual data entry, GL coding, maybe cost center coding if you're doing any of that. And our goal is to automate that as much as we possibly can. So a cleaner flow, although similar, would look something like this, but instead of people that have just kind of miserable jobs where they're just typing in data, we're kind of replacing that with technology, and we're utilizing smart technology to implement these streamlined processes. Our goal is to provide a significant reduction in costs and cycle, like I shared with you, and that's why we offer this software called FlexiCapture for invoices. Now, some benefits of the software are as such. It's capture at the point of entry, which means simply that no matter how you get an invoice, whether it's on paper, whether it's in an email box, whether it's in a folder, we can process an invoice the same way every time, no matter how we got it. And that's why we kind of mentioned the second point about one solution for paper or digital. It doesn't matter, once again, how you get the document. We're going to process them all the same way. There's no doubt about it. We want to lower the cost per invoice while we have the visibility into it. And we've already talked about workflow as well, and we'll kind of highlight that here in the slides coming. But our goal is, at the end of the day, is to get the best data we can possibly get. And a lot of that intelligence, believe it or not, actually comes from you, because we offer the software to do it, but you know your rules, you know your processes, you know what the human beings should be looking for, and how can we manipulate that to make that into, some sort of computer logic and workflow logic that we can use in our corporation. So a lot of that is what you see here. I'm actually going to skip this slide here, and we'll kind of dive right into some of the specifics. The flow of the software looks like such. You provide documents using any of these 5 different channels, and I've already shared those with you. You can email them, you can upload them or scan them, you can use a departmental scanner, and we have web versions and even mobile capture available through the product. Nonetheless, documents come into the software, and the software does its magic. It's going to determine, one, that it's an invoice. It's going to determine who the vendor is. It's going to determine if there's a purchase order on it. It's going to do all of those cool things that we really expect from an auditing perspective that the software should be doing. What it does next is it puts it into what we call a review and correction queue. It's a human modified queue or attended queue. And this human attended queue is where literally an AP clerk or an AP staff member would look at invoices, and you'll see this on the demo today, but we will look at invoices and determine what the software grabbed, make sure it was correct, and then confront any rules that were violated in the process. There is an opportunity to go what we call touchless, and that's that top arrow. Touchless means we can implement rules, very flexible rules on how we skip a queue so that there's not even a human involved in the process. That is very, very configurable. Some of our clients love it, and they do it as much as they can, and some of our clients absolutely hate it, and they want a human being to see every document. And some of our clients do a hybrid of that. So maybe there are certain vendors that they trust, or maybe there are certain dollar amounts they want to put some touchless rules around. We can do that as well. Of course, at the end of the day, though, we want these into our accounting systems and our ERP systems. I did share with you different ways to get documents into the software, and that's what we're highlighting on this slide. I can tell you 2 of the most common ones in AP are email. Usually there's always an email probably that we're going to monitor, or that invoices are being sent to, and then scanning is very popular for paper-based. Believe it or not, with all of today's cool mobile technology, mobile devices are actually one of the least common ways we get documents in, not because the technology can't support it, but because in the AP world, it's probably not as influential as email and scanning. One of the major concepts of the software is what we call master data, and this is how we detect things like vendor and purchase order. Master data is us using the intelligence that you already have in your accounting systems or ERP systems today that already tell us who your vendors are. They already tell us what your purchase orders are, and the line items on your purchase orders, your expense accounts, and things like that. That's data that you already have in your organization. That's the same data we want to use to detect the vendor on the invoice through the software, to detect a purchase order, etc. And so that's our goal, is that we would use your data in your company already, using an extract of it so that we can use that intelligence that you already have within our software. Because at the end of the day, we do not want our software to be an AP software. We don't want you to manage vendors within our software. We don't want you to manage purchase orders within our software. You already have a software to do that. We want to be excellent and terrific at capturing the data. So that's why we use the data in your system that we reference as master data to extract those details. Out of the box, the software captures several things, including the items that you see highlighted on this document. And you're definitely not limited to anything you see here. But obviously invoice number and dates and business units and vendors. Line items, of course. Line items, everybody's interested in line items anymore. And actually, it's pretty neat that we can even train the software on line items, and we'll talk about that in a second. Line items, by the way, is one of those things where you kind of separate the good softwares versus the bad, because a lot of software can extract OCR data on a document, but giving you the ability to extract repeated data like line items, which come in a variety of forms. Obviously, we don't control the format of invoice documents, so we have to have a software that is flexible enough to accommodate the different formats that line items come in. And then lastly, of course, currencies and totals and all those kind of good tax-related things as well that we want to extract. Within the software, we can perform what we call a two-way match, and that's where we compare a purchase order against the invoice. Not only do we do that on the total, so does the invoice total match the purchase order total, but we can also do that on a per line item basis as well. And most of the time, frankly, that is also how we do it. Everybody wants to make sure that every line item on the invoice is on that purchase order and was meant to be purchased, and also gives us the ability to find problems on an invoice, such as things that were double billed or things that aren't represented correctly in comparison to our purchase order. I did talk about going touchless. I don't really intend to speak more on that unless you have questions on it. But once again, touchless is the ability to kind of skip the human side of it and just let the software extract the invoice details and then pass those details along to our accounting system. Once the system does extract the OCR details, it goes into what we call a verification queue. And a queue will look something similar to this, and you'll see this on the demo, so we won't spend much time reading the slide here. But the software will show you on the left what it extracted, and then on the right, a copy of the actual document that it's processing. And we'll show that all on a demo quite deep here with you in just a second. And we'll kind of dive into that. We have what we call advanced database lookups, which gives us the ability, if you remember, we use your master data in your company for vendors and purchase orders, but you may want to expand the solution to maybe look at a parts catalog for orders or something advanced, some sort of advanced database that you already have internally, and we support those as well. It just gives you the ability to kind of take this solution one step further. Within the software, we have this concept called training, and training is the ability for a human being to modify or correct the software results. Now, the cool part is that it gives us the ability for an AP clerk or an AP staff member to influence those results without somebody in information technology or IT needing to be involved. It doesn't require a consultant like me to do it for you. This is simply something that your AP staff would do as they're processing documents. So in this case, if they wanted to train the software where the date field was for a given invoice, they would simply select where the date field is for this vendor and then hit a training button. And the software, after three different samples for a vendor, will forever train itself on that vendor's format. And the reason why we do that is, one, it gives us the ability to make sure the software is zoned in correctly on the exact specific location, and it gives you the ability to kind of tweak things. So if you want to add fields to the software that don't come out of the box, which is very easy, by the way, you can do that and then train the software on where those fields are located. Once the software does extract everything and it's been through a queue, we got to figure out what we do with it. And from a software perspective, we are very, very flexible. We integrate with many ERP systems. We can do things as basic as exporting to Excel or CSV, or we can do things advanced like communicating with databases, web services, and some other APIs that are offered in technology systems today. We can talk more about that if you have questions. And then wrapping up here, we do support multiple country formats, multiple currencies, multiple tax implications. And out of the box, you kind of see the ones that are highlighted there. And other countries can be added very, very easily. The other countries that you would add that aren't included here that are maybe kind of common are, I don't know if you do anything with Chinese, Japanese, or Korean businesses. Some of our global customers do that. Those would be other countries that aren't included necessarily out of the box, but it's very, very easy within the software to expand them. And then the solution with Abby is just terrific. They are a worldwide technology leader. So if you Google OCR software, I guarantee you will learn a lot about Abby. They're a leader in the industry. This is a priority product for them, which means you get the solution just continues getting better and better. The support is fantastic. And then it is agnostic to the back-end system that you're using. So yes, you may start off with just invoice processing, but then maybe you'll want to expand that to purchase order processing or customer order processing. And then you may want to expand it to some other random document, maybe that's not even related to AP. So that gives us the ability to process a variety of documents, no matter where you intend to put the data. And lastly, it is affordable and inexpensive, mostly because when you purchase the solution, it's unlimited users. And that's our goal, is to just give you the ability to process as many invoices, et cetera, that you would like to do. From my company's perspective, we're an award-winning partner with Abby. We have a lot of years in this space. We are OCR geeks. And so that's kind of how we just pride ourselves, is we know how to process documents. We know what invoices look like. And our goal is to do that at the highest success rate possible. Any questions on any of the details you saw in this PowerPoint?
Yeah, I mean, so first question, just wanted to know, so are you guys processing POs within Abby, or would the PO would be processed inside the software itself, the accounting system, and then it needs to be exported inside Abby to make a match, and then re-exported back into the financial system?
Yeah, so you would not create the purchase order or anything within Abby. That would all be done in your accounting system. And from an invoice processing perspective, all we do is we use that intelligence that's already in the system, your system today. We would get an extraction of it on a periodic basis, and then we would use that data to do a two-way match. But our system would not be used to actually create or manage that purchase order. Okay,
so that's nice. And second question is, so does it manage all the taxes? Because I saw that it's actually scanning the total of the invoice, but it does.
Yep.
Okay, great.
It does. Yep. And so you got your GST, your HST, your other taxes. Absolutely, those are out of the box as well. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. You're very welcome. And any other questions? Good questions, by the way.
No, we're good from our side. Thank you.
Let's dive in. I want to show you the software. Where I'm at now is I'm in a queue. Remember, we talked about queues, and queues are where documents go after the software has recognized the details. It's the part where a human being would staff, and we would look at these invoices that we see here and process them and make sure the software is right. So in my queue, I have roughly 28 invoices, so you can see that here on the left. We have invoices. Some of these invoices are mine that I use for demos, and then some of them are samples that you folks provided, and we'll show those to you. And within the software, we have an idea called confidence level. Confidence level is this concept where the software is grading itself on how confident it is that it extracted the proper data. Now, there are two things when it comes to AP. We have confidence level, which is where the software is just making sure on a per character basis that it's correct. So it's making sure that that 1 is a 1. And not an L. It's making sure that that's a 6 and not a G, something like that. And that's where confidence level comes in. There's also a concept called rules, and you can see a few here with some red flags on them. Rules give us the ability for you to define business logic violations. So for example, maybe we expect to find an invoice number on every single document. And if we don't find one, we want that to create a rule. And a rule will bring that to somebody's attention in a queue, and then they'll have to confront those rules. So those are a couple things, and I'll go deeper into rules in a second, but I wanted to show you, kind of just explain to you what you're seeing on the screen here, and so that there's no questions on what we're looking at. From an AP perspective, we would kind of just start at the top. So we would double click the first one, and you can see here on the left is what the software extracted, and on the right is a copy of the document. Now, before we go any deeper, I want you to realize that what I'm showing you today is a demo. You are not stuck with anything that I talk about today. So if you want to switch the fields here, or you want to add additional fields, for example, like your taxes and things, we can absolutely do that. On a demo, I don't typically show those fields, but you are not stuck with anything that I show you, and you can add or remove any of the fields that you see here, okay? So for demo purposes, I kind of throw in as much as I think people want to see, but you are absolutely not restricted to what I have on the screen. So what the software did on this case is it determined that this is an invoice versus a credit note, or sometimes we process statements. So there's our invoice type. It determined the vendor. And remember, at the end of the day, vendor is always pointing back to your accounting system or your ERP system. So that's exactly how these vendors work, like what we were talking about with your question. We use your data to figure out who the vendor is. So the name of your vendor, the address details that you have, maybe any bank account information that you have, or something even as basic as an email address that you have in your accounting system. We can use that data and make that data help us determine who the correct vendor is on the document. At the end of the day, it comes down to who the vendor ID is. This is the person you're going to be cutting a check to, and we want to make sure we get that correct, because at the end of the day, that's the person that you're going to be paying some money to. And so our software is kind of giving you the flexibility so that we can tailor this, make sure that we're finding the correct vendor, and then providing those details in a nice, friendly format that gives you confidence that not just that we detected the correct vendor, but we can pass this now downstream to make sure that eventually in your accounting system, a check will be cut for this. Okay. The software in this demo, we have it extracting invoice number and date. And as I click on these fields, you may be able to see on the left here, especially if we zoom in, as I click around, the software shows you the region in yellow. So the software actually gives you a hint at where that location is. And you can see that in yellow. It's showing you where it's at. And if I click on any field, it'll jump to that specific field where we're looking. So it extracted invoice number and date, some amounts here, and this is where your taxes would be in place here. And we've extracted line items. Okay, so line items, once again, if you remember from my presentation, are one where we're not all created equal. Not all softwares are created equal in line items, because this is very, very tough for softwares to figure out, because line items on a very clean invoice like this are different than on those invoices that you know, I'm sure, where they wrap multiple lines and things like that. So we have to have a lot of flexibility with how we detect line items. Any field that you see here on the screen is trainable. And if you remember that concept within the presentation, if for some reason this invoice came in and we didn't find invoice number, what I would simply need to do is tell the software, hey, invoice number is here. You'll see it automatically populated that box for us. And then what you didn't see was this training button. The training button then gives us the ability to tell the software, hey, now forever remember that for this vendor, this is where you find invoice number. And that concept training is a very, very important key part of the software, because one, it doesn't require an IT resource or a consultant to set up a template to do this, to train it. And it doesn't require an IT resource to set up the rules and things like that. It's putting the control in the hands of your AP department. Now, we don't want to train every invoice, and that would kind of defeat the point of the software, if you know what I'm saying. Training is done, manual training like this is done only when the software doesn't detect a field or when it doesn't detect it correctly. We don't want to train every single vendor, because the software behind the scenes has rules built in it. So for example, for invoice number, we've already built within the software a set of keywords that invoice number looks like, right? So we know that invoice number can sometimes be spelled out, invoice number. Sometimes it's invoice $. Sometimes it's invoice NO. And we have that intelligence already built within the software. So we only train when we have to provide the software the location of data that it either missed or is incorrect, okay? But once we train this, the software will remember for this vendor the location of those fields. Any questions on any of that? You're taking it too easy on me. So the other thing I did want to mention is that you can train line items as well. And I just like to show this to you on demos, because I think it's very, very cool and very, very simple. So give me 1 second as I just kind of erase some data. We'll just show you how you train line items real quick, because I think you'll really like this. Yeah. To train a line, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I do have a small question. I mean, because I can see in the confidence level, so the second from the top, so 2,713 versus 2,752. That means there's about like 40 characters, 39 actually, that were not taken by the OCR. So yes. What kind of character doesn't it take? Like, is it the special characters? Is it numbers? Is it letters? Yeah. So how does it work?
Yeah, so there are different levels. I can tell the software how picky or not picky to be on a given field for the results it has. I have mine set up to be extremely picky because I like that question that you just asked. On invoices, we can actually, most invoices, we can trim that back quite a bit. So anytime the software is set up to be very picky, like what I have mine being set up for, and anytime it even has a question about the character's results, you can see it highlights that in red here. Hopefully you can see that on your side. I'm assuming you can see the red. And anytime you see the red, it's the software. It's just taking a niche down. And so it's just saying, hey, this 1 and this 0, it's just asking me as the AP clerk or AP staff member to verify that that result is correct. Now, I'll just be honest with you. Most invoices from an OCR perspective are very clean printed documents. So we probably don't need the software to be so picky because it's going to be pretty darn accurate. Because behind the scenes, we've already built in rules that say, hey, for total, and for taxes and for freight, these must be numbers, right? So we know that there are only so many digits. There's only maybe separated by a comma, and there may be a decimal place in there. So the software already has that intelligence in there. From an OCR perspective, I have mindset being very picky. And so you can see here, some of these, it's kind of highlighted down here in red, some of these ones that it's being a little bit more picky on. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, you're welcome. Good question. I did want to show you real quick how you train a line item just very quickly. In order to train a line item, you tell it typically the very first 1 or 2 line items. So everything that we can fill out here, we want to fill out. So here's our part number. So you can see it's a point and click. For description, I'm just literally dragging over the words and it's populating it. For quantity, I'm just telling it where the quantity field is. If there was a unit of measure, of course, I would supply that, unit price, and then total price. So I would want to tell the software either the first 1 or 2 line items. When I'm done, I want to tell the software to continue line items by right-clicking and selecting that option. So what the software is going to do is now use the intelligence that I told it about that first line item to detect every other line item here. And you can kind of see that. And it will span multiple pages. And you can see here the software has now detected every single line item on this invoice. And that's the ability, that is really pretty darn cool. And because I'm telling you, most other competing softwares would require you to create what we call a template, where you would have to go find an IT resource just to be able to train the system where to locate line items. Okay. And of course, anytime I'm done with training, I would want to hit the train button so that the software captures this as a document that I want to use it to train itself on. Did that all make sense?
Davis?
Yes.
Yeah, it makes sense. Can you give us just 1 second? We're trying to brainstorm because we have a couple of questions within each other.
Yeah.
Just 1 second, please.
Awesome.
Travis?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. I got a question. So now I see the list of the invoices at the top that have come in.
Yes.
Now, if there's POs that relate to these invoices, how do we know that they've matched to the PO? Is that in this system here, or is it somewhere else we're going to do that?
Nope, it's all right here. And for example, if there was one that did not match correctly, anything that doesn't have a flag on this says that it's fine. It matched it correctly. Anytime, and I'm just going to take, I think this might be one that isn't finding the correct item on the purchase order. Anytime it didn't find an item on the purchase order. So in this case, you can see the software detected on this invoice that there's a purchase order. It detected the line items. It detected that this line item is associated to an item on an order, hence this order item ID. Also, I can take a peek at the purchase order and see what is on the purchase order as well as from a line item perspective. You can see here, though, that I have an error. And what the software is telling me is that we've detected another line here for handling, but we don't see handling on the purchase order. Now, handling may be one that we honestly just don't put on the purchase order. So at any time, I can actually override that and say, okay, we're going to override this and allow it. But you can see here, the software is at least showing you from a human perspective that it did not find this value or this line item on the purchase order. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I guess my next question then is, I don't really want people to have to look at these invoices. So at what level, confidence level, can I just say, hey, it's good, it's automated, it's all matching, let it all go through?
Awesome. So confidence level is only one piece. Confidence level probably of 99% or 100 is pretty common on an invoice. So that is answer to your first question. The other part of your question says, look, if there's not a flag on here, then we maybe don't need to stop it at a queue. So if all of these that don't have a flag, then don't stop them at the queue. We can create that workflow rule that says, hey, bypass this, go straight to the accounting system if the confidence is 99% or 100 and there are no rules violated on the document.
Okay, cool.
We can also tweak those rules, so you're not stuck with how I just described it. We can even make it more advanced. You can say, well, maybe if it's those two qualifications that I just mentioned, and maybe if the invoice is less than $1,000 or $10,000, then we can flow it. Maybe if it's over $10,000, you actually do want a human to see it or something like that. That is all done through the workflow. It's very configurable. In fact, I can show it to you in a second. But you're not stuck. It's kind of up to you to determine how you want that to flow. And once you do, we just put that into the workflow. But we can use any information that we extract on this document, we can use in your workflow. So we can use dollar amounts so that if it's over, $10,000, then, don't process it automatically, or certain vendors, if you have certain vendors that you just trust and that the software has shown a good pattern of extracting the detail, then maybe you just want to automate those as well. It's very, very flexible.
So I do have another question also. Let's say that these invoices are pretty much all the big invoice, so the ones that we actually receive by mail and everything. But what about if we wanted to actually scan everything that is coming from credit cards? The process would be slightly different, and for us, there's also the approval. There's a little bit different. So do you guys have any kind of, if I can put it like this, like double system to scan, like to segregate stuff that are actually being scanned, coming related to credit cards versus stuff that is standard issued for IT, software, hardware, and so on?
Absolutely. We have a couple different ways we can do that. One is we have what we call document definition. So a document definition is the software being able to detect different styles of documents. And so you can see I have your style of documents here. I can create a non-invoice document, like a shipping receipt that I want to extract data on. I can use document definitions to segregate different styles of documents. The other thing we can do is we can literally just create a new project within the software. One project would be for AP and have AP staff members assigned to it. The other project may be for your credit card processing, which would have its own workflow as well. So there are a couple ways to do that, and really, I guess it would just be best for us to determine that when we implement the software with you, which one would be best. But the reason why we would create a new project is maybe if you want to separate staff and who's involved in the process, or if it just has a completely different workflow that maybe we can't use the details on the document to help us determine.
Yeah, because the workflow, I guess, even on the Multiview side, for everything that is not going to be concerning credit cards is going to be pretty straightforward because we don't have that many purchases. The bulk of it is all done on credit cards, maybe a quarter to $500,000 a month, and that's on multiple credit cards. So if we can actually do kind of a segregation on that level and then upload this on different workflow in Multiview, it's also, we're going to need you guys to guide us on how to integrate this inside Multiview to have a workflow that is manageable.
Yeah. And I'm confident Stephanie and Greg can provide some feedback on that as well. But I have every bit of confidence that we can provide the segregation that you just mentioned. And from an output standpoint, when we're done with all of this and we export it, we have a lot of different options that will give us the ability to integrate with Multiview.
Very nice.
Travis, quick question for you. So if we go touchless, ideally no one would even open up the Abby software. Everything would be at 100% or 99% confidence, and it would go through. Now, if ever there's an issue where the invoice total, for example, is higher than the PO and there's a flag, how is the clerk going to be notified of it? Do we need to manually go into Abby at the end of each day to look for flags? Is there a push notification system?
Yeah, so the answer is both, or one of the above. It's really up to you. We can send an email to certain clerks or a certain distribution group or something like that if you want. Or they can, some of our customers just make it a habit that every morning they come in and they open up the queue and they work their invoices. It's really up to you. We can do both. We have a lot of flexibility to control that process for you. Now, I do want to just kind of put a little disclaimer in. it does sound wonderful to go touchless, and I think you absolutely should make that your goal. Typically, what my preference is when we do an implementation that you don't actually go touchless at first, that we actually give your AP staff the ability to see the documents, to get comfortable with them, see the software, and also make sure that we have all the rules accommodated that you're looking to have. And then eventually, over the next probably month to quarter, you would decide then to start implementing your rules to go touchless. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And Travis, so let's say for example, 60 days, someone manually checks each invoice to make sure for 100% confidence. After
Correct.
those 60 days, when we've trained all our vendors and the Abby knows exactly where to pick up what data from each invoice, what would need to occur to have an invoice that has a mistake on it? Like what will cause an 80% confidence level after everything's been trained? Is it an invoice? Obviously a new vendor, fine. Is an invoice that was scanned manually that we received by mail higher risk of errors?
Yes, scanning does impact it. So a poor scan can affect confidence level. But assuming that most of your documents are not that way or are usually scanned very cleanly, the only reason why you would have something in a queue then that would not go touchless is obviously any sort of business rule violation where it does the flag. So it could be a purchase order difference. It could be a total difference. Yeah, I guess if that makes sense. Any rules that you create. By the way, you can create your own rules within the software. I'll show you how to do that in a second. And when you create your rules, like I said, they can be something as basic as, hey, make sure this is on the purchase order, or we can say, hey, every line item must match the total on the invoice, and that's a very common one that we would implement. So these rules are up to you, but the answer would be anytime a rule is violated or the confidence level is below a reasonable threshold for you, that's when it would show up in a queue.
Okay, great.
That makes sense. Just one last question, and it's related to this. So would you say that the confidence level is just as good with pictures? So let's say somebody goes to a restaurant, take a pictures, of an invoice. Is the system actually quite comfortable with that too?
It's a loaded question because not all pictures are created equal. We actually do have the ability to process mobile captured documents. Now, if that's going to be standard, then we would probably ask you to consider purchasing what we call our mobile capture solution, which gives us the ability to provide some on-device, whether it's iOS or Android, but on-device manipulation of a document before it's sent to Abby. So we would actually guide your users on the device where to line up the document. It accommodates things like angles, like if I'm taking a picture at an angle of a receipt and things like that. So that would be something above and beyond. But I kind of hope I answered your question. It's good and bad. It just depends on how much of your process is done through the mobile capture.
So, my question, is the application that you guys have like really straightforward, like really taking a picture and just send, or is it something that you need to actually manipulate? Because I know that most of the people using the application here are, they want something that is really easy to use.
Yeah, it is. It's a very easy to use thing. My only hesitation there is it is what we call a software development kit. So it's meant for you to kind of build your own app upon. It's a little bit deeper probably than what you think about with normal vendor invoices. So there are two different sides of this process. One are vendor invoices, and that's kind of what I'm highlighting with you today, is vendor invoices. Expense management is kind of its own beast within the product, and that's where you would want to do something like a mobile capture solution.
Travis, here's my question. So let's say one of the owners has a credit card and he goes out to dinner at restaurants all month. I want him to be able to take a picture of the receipt and just send the email to whatever email it has to go to for it to be entered. I don't want that person to have to manipulate it on his phone or anything, because I know that's not going to happen.
Yeah, correct. No, and we can accommodate that. Now, this is Flexi Capture, not Flexi Magic, right? I can't sell you magic. So if it's just done at a poor angle, it's a very poor picture. The software will attempt to extract it, but it may end up in a queue where one of your AP staff members will end up fixing some details there for us.
Right.
It can be done, absolutely, and there are just different ways to do it. Now, the software out of the box it'll read a picture that you send to it, absolutely. If you expect to get super good results, we have that mobile capture software development kit that I was talking about, which really kind of gives your users the ability to get the best image, and it doesn't require them to like verify OCR results and stuff like what you're seeing on the screen, but it does require them to kind of line up the document and make sure it's a good capturable document for an OCR project.
That's great. Thank you, Travis.
Yep. And that may be its own topic that we want to confront on its own here as well. So we can definitely dive into that again if we need to. I do want to show you some of your documents, just what the software did out of the box. I have maybe a dozen of them here. And you can see here, I think we did very well. I'm going to zoom out on some of this so you can kind of see this. Now, I did not do any training on these documents, so I'm assuming that anything that the software grabbed is kind of non-trained, so kind of just go with it. So I'm just going to just show you some of your documents. I'll click around here. You can see here, and in blue is where the software detects it. So here it looks like some computer equipment or something like that. We've extracted that details. Of course, all of these taxes would be out of the box like we talked about earlier. I don't have them on my demo, but we can absolutely accommodate these taxes, okay? That doesn't scare me one bit, and we have done that for clients. Yep, and so you can just see. Go ahead.
Go back to that invoice you were on there, the first one?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you have currency. Where's the currency? Do you have currency USD? And the currency is in Canadian.
Yeah, now that's just actually because my project's only set up for US right now, so it's assuming that everything is coming in as US at the end of the day. I just didn't include the Canadian add-on when I did this.
Will automatically identify currencies?
It will, absolutely. Identify currencies. It will be able to do the math on these taxes and all those kind of things. It's a little bit, it's just more than typically what I would show on a demo, but absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Very nice, thank you.
Actually, just to give you some confidence in that, I want to just show you really quick behind the scenes. A lot of the fields that we extracted, I didn't show you on this demo. Because out of the box, the software comes up with all of these fields, and if I included these on a demo, we would look through every single one of these fields, and I'd have you on this phone for half a day. And then by that time, there'd already be a foot on the ground, a foot of snow on the ground. So you can see we're capturing a lot of details here, including tax rates and things like that. A lot of these are out of the box. By the way, if there isn't a field out of the box, we literally create a new field. And then we put intelligence around those fields like keywords. So for example, GST taxes are usually labeled GST or GST : or something like that. That'd be an example of creating a field and putting some intelligence around it. So without getting super geeky in the setup, these are just a lot of the fields that we extract out of the box that I'm not even showing you on the demo today.
Travis, this is Greg.
Uh-huh.
You mind if I just jump in here for a quick second for the Momentum team? Just so you know, we've been through obviously multiple conversations, multiple demos with Travis and team, including our technical folks have already had some fairly strong conversations with Travis on how this data will move. That's obviously all on us. That has nothing to do with you, but we've already sort of had a deep dive into that in the Oracle database and how this will all work, just to give you, to quote Travis, to give you some confidence.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Greg, for that. I'm just going to sneak through some of these other invoices. I know you're probably, wanting to see how some of your results did. I'm going to try to get a different vendor here from the Quad Bridge because we were able to extract those pretty darn well. This would be an example of is this a utility, I believe? And the software, we've actually did a whole utility company where we're extracting like meter information and things like that. So I have a demo of that if you're interested in seeing that in a follow-up. But in this case, the software, without understanding what you wanted to extract on this, you can see the software out of the box attempted to extract this information. This one, at the end of the day, might need to be trained by us or by an AP staff member to determine what exactly pieces of data on this bill that you would expect to extract for AP. But this is a 94-page bill here, so we just need to tell the software and guide it where it should be found at. I'm just kind of going through some invoices. You can see these here, pretty basic here. This is for OPM pros. Without any training, the software is extracting this information. It did not find quantities for this, but I don't see a quantity on here. At any point, by the way, where a user needs to put in some intervention into these, whether this is just a quantity of one, and maybe the AP system is expecting a quantity, we can override this data at any time. We can modify it or switch it at any time. Okay. And then I think our last sample is another similar OPM pros here. What other questions? What other questions or workflows or any processes that you would like to talk through that I can help you with?
Yeah, well, it looks good right now, but I'm not sure about this. We did have another question, because it's like all this is going to match for all the invoice that we have with the POs, and it looks really great. But is there another way that you guys can actually match it with credit card statements?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We can do credit card statements. The only thing with credit card statements is that we would have to create what rules you want to extract. So what type of data goes into your AP system when we've extracted? Where is that one that isn't a statement? So in this case, what information do you want to extract? Do you want to extract, obviously line items on invoices for things that are utilities or phone or electric or gas? At that point, you would have to tell us on this document what you expect to go into your AP system. But for credit cards, it looks probably every line item on a credit card bill would be extracted, and absolutely we can handle that.
Okay, so what you're saying is we either use the credit card statements without, we don't ask our people to actually scan invoice when they are processing something. If they go to the restaurant, we don't ask them to touch anything. We just ask we just actually have the credit card statement scanned at the end of the month, because I was kind of like,
you can't have that because you need the invoices.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, unless what he would be suggesting is you bring all the physical invoice, which won't happen.
Travis, and this is also for most of you. So for Abby, for the AP side is great for invoice processing. We're just trying to build a bridge between invoice receipts from example restaurants and our monthly credit card statements. So we're trying to find the most efficient way and the most automated way to match our statements with our receipts with minimal human intervention, ideally from the credit card holder. If they can just snap a picture, and then even someone from the accounting side can link it, either throw it in Abby and have it recognized and link it to a credit card statement. We just,
Travis, just hold on 1 second. I just want to talk to these guys for 1 second. Hold on.
Yeah, you got it. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Travis, that's good. We're just trying to brainstorm at the same time. So yeah, can you keep going? We're just asking ourselves, so how does it match between the invoice, scanned with phones that would be processed by credit cards with the credit card statement?
Sure. And it's interesting that you say that. I'm actually working with one of our clients who already bought this system for AP, and now they are doing expense management, and they're looking at how they can utilize phones and devices. So I do have quite a bit of detail on that I can share with you either at the end of this or in another call as well. It's a very similar approach, but it is a little bit different because we are capturing, images and things like that. We want to make sure we get clean enough images for OCR. So we can go deep dive into that too in a second. The last thing I'll show you, and then I'm wide open for questions, is what we call our workflow. And this is the process that tells us how documents get managed within the software and what happens with these documents. I'm not going to lecture you on some of the technical side of the project, but I will show you one thing. The software has what we call entry conditions and exit conditions, and they're very, very flexible. They're like writing if-then statements. So if the amount is over 10,000, then do something with it. So when we have a stage or a queue, we tell the software how a document enters that queue, and then we tell it what it does when it exits the queue. So, for example, it may end up in a queue because there was a rule violation. Okay, but maybe if the invoice is over, I don't know, $10,000, we want that to go to an approval queue. And that's what we do here is we set up the entry conditions and the exit conditions on the queue, and you have no limit on the number of queues or the users assigned to a queue. And I'm just showing this to you to kind of show you some flexibility that we have with the software as far as process and workflow management there. At the end of the day, the software, this information gets exported. It will get exported using we'll be teaming up with Multiview there, making sure that we communicate in the proper ways and expected places that we can get this well integrated for you folks. At the end of the day, though, these get exported, put into your AP system, and then the rest of the process is managed downstream there. We do not retain any data after we've exported to the end system. So we are not a repository. Our goal we want to be experts at capture. That is where we want to live, and that's what our software does. And then once we've extracted it, we will pass it downstream to be used by your downstream systems.
That's great. Thank you very much, Trevor. I mean, even for shooting all the questions, you've been a great sport. One last question, I guess. Will you guys actually be helping on building the whole process, so the bridge between Multiview and Abby? I guess that's more a question for Multiview, because I know that there seems to be like a management, a workflow management within Abby that is kind of possible, stop limits and all this, but there's also one that is built within Multiview. So I just want to make sure that you guys can actually find the optimal process, if I can put it like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Greg and Stephanie will have a lot of more input than I probably do because they have a lot more history with you. I will say this. The software gives you a flexibility to do it either way. And I think at the end of the day, we want our software to do the capture, and then we want Multiview to do the management and the process and the workflow. So I'm confident that we'll make it happen for you. It'll be very seamless for you, and that we have the right resources involved to do so.
Travis, just before we go, quick question. So you mentioned that Abby has an iOS and Android app, correct?
They do.
Is it as easy as, let's say, for example, the owner of a credit card opening up the app, snapping a picture of his invoice, throwing the invoice away, and it'll automatically get sent into our Abby?
It is, yes. And now there is some cost associated with this mobile capture SDK that we were talking about. And I just wanted to show you, let me see if I have a good PowerPoint that I can just steal some pictures out of real quick. That way I promise I won't steal much of your time.
Do you have a number to give us?
I don't actually. So are you asking pricing? Is that what you're asking?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
If you can just show us the application.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was just going to try to hunt down my PowerPoint here for you. Give me just a few seconds here.
While you're doing that, Travis, this is Stephanie. I just want to chime in that for the Momentum folks, we actually have in Multiview also an expense management process where you can take a picture of the receipt and send it to an email inbox, and it creates an expense report. So Dave and Chris can demo that for you if you'd like to see it.
Very good. So perhaps I might be even stepping on Stephanie there. So I apologize if I am. From an Abby perspective, I will say this. Our SDK gives you the ability to make sure that we're analyzing results correctly. So I wanted to show you some, for example, blur detection. That happens a lot with especially expenses, because let's be honest, when we take a picture of an expense, we probably aren't caring that much about the blur or not. So our software will accommodate a lot of that. Glares, of course, any type of noise on a document, where there's like maybe a border, like it's done on like maybe you sit your receipt down on a table, but there are some borders around it. So there's obviously the receipt, but there's also a table behind it, and we need to figure out how we detect that noise as not the document, and just different image enhancements options that you would have using this. So, and I'm just throwing that out there from an ABBYY perspective, and Stephanie and Greg, you guys probably have your own input on expense management on your side.
Right. Well, actually, this is Greg, by the way. As I was listening to this conversation, there may be a hybrid solution here, because we do have an expense management. You can take a picture, it automatically gets set up in tables inside of Multiview underneath that particular user's name, etc. But what we don't do is we can't scan the credit card statement, look for the line items, and try to do a match. ABBYY can do that. Correct. Right? So if forgive us, but let's have a sidebar conversation, Travis. So if you think of the two data sets, if we've got the expense data set that we can hand to you, and you can scan the statement as was requested by our friends at Momentum, you can do that matching process, can you not?
Exactly correct. That is correct.
Yeah, okay. So that's where I see it as.
Why are we scanning credit card statements? Aren't we downloading the information directly from the bank? Like a bank?
Are we? Oh. Okay, I'm not sure. You mentioned, somebody in the phone call mentioned scanning the credit card statement, I believe. But if part of your project right now, and I'm not in the details on the project, if part of the project is we're downloading that already from the bank, then we can do the matching ourselves. Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be it. It would be downloaded directly into Multiview, the statement online, right?
Okay.
API.
Yep. The credit card user goes for dinner, takes a quick picture of the receipt, and then Multiview will pull the Visa statement directly in the software, and then we can link the receipt that's been uploaded by the user to that line item on the Visa statement, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
so hold on. In ABBYY, if I enter all my receipts from my credit card in ABBYY, that information is going to be passed into Multiview under our account for this credit card. And then when we download the transactions from the credit card online into Multiview, they're going to automatically match, correct?
Well, I mean, this is Greg again. Technically, yes, but what I'm saying is that we're being presented with a problem to solve for you. We may be able to scan those directly into Multiview as well. We have handheld, right off your iPhone, scan the receipt, it winds up in our tables, and if we're downloading the bank statement or the credit card statement, then there's no reason why we couldn't do the matching for you. So cool. I guess the best way to look at it is we've got a problem we're trying to solve. We have several different ways we can approach it. We're not sure which one's going to be the best yet.
Right.
Yeah, in my mind, Greg, I mean, I think that, in the end, you can brainstorm it with Stephanie, and you guys can come up with the best solution,
yes.
The easiest and the one that's going to make the most sense. In the end, we just want to have the best functionality. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah.
Agreed completely.
Yeah. Thanks for letting us brainstorm on this call, by the way. Usually we don't get that question as far as expenses, so I didn't mean to take us away from AP invoices, but I am glad that we can confront it with you. Okay, from a demo perspective, I'm done. So do you have any other questions from an AP standpoint, AP invoice processing standpoint?
No, thank you very much, Travis. At least from our side, it was quite clear. I can actually see the value of ABBYY. It looks like a great software. And hopefully, in the end, we can work something nice with Multiview team can actually figure the best solution for us.
Awesome. Very good. Thanks for everybody's time today. From my perspective, Greg, Stephanie, is there anything we need to do to close?
I think I'm okay. We'll reach back out to the Momentum team and form a plan, and Travis will probably be in touch with you as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Have a
too.
wonderful day. Stay warm.
Great job, Travis. Thank you.
Travis, thanks for
Thank
your
you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Absolutely my pleasure.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye now.
Have a good week.
Thanks, everybody on the
Bye.
phone. Bye.
Bye now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.